Hi everyone, welcome to day 2. I'm Paul Chatterton. I lead the Landscape Finance Lab for WWF, and I'm going to be talking to you about landscape finance, funnily enough. Let me get my presentation up and running. I hope you can see that, and I'll reduce the chat boxes. And my theme today is finding the right tools for the problem. And that problem is, of course, environmental sustainability. I want to start with a small provocation that nature-based solution. I'm not a great fan of nature-based solutions. We've heard a lot yesterday about nature-based solutions. We'll hear a lot more today. But my proposition is that they're not the right tool for the problem. As Einstein said, we can't use the same tool that caused the problem to solve the problem. And after 30 years of experience in conservation work across all continents on this earth, except for Antarctica, I really believe that the project approach is the problem, and nature-based solutions are just one iteration of that. They're good. I'm not saying that they're not useful, but they need to be put into a context. So what I want to do is talk to you about how we can retool, how we can find the right tools for the problem. And there's 3 things I want to take you through. One is going beyond projects and integrating them into an ecosystem scale thinking. The second is to reframe finance so that it works at the scale that nature works at. And the third is to focus metrics so we can really track that we are delivering for nature. Here's a very nice graphic from the Dasgupta review on the scales of nature. So nature works from the scale of the gene to the biosphere. If we're really going to secure nature, we have to develop our tools at the scale of the ecosystem. And the project approach doesn't work at that scale. Nature-based solutions are smaller scale, shorter term, sector locked, and competitive. It's not true that the more nature-based solutions you have in an area, the more you save nature. In fact, what can happen is that you can crowd out nature by having too many nature-based solutions all competing for the same work. Maybe that's not always the case. There's plenty of cases where that won't happen, but we have to be careful about that. How do we resolve that? Well, my proposition is that we think at the scale of the landscape. The ecosystem level is, the landscapes work at an ecosystem level. They work over a generational time frame. They're integrated, they create synergies, and they're locally owned. And that might sound like a bit of a pipe dream, but you'll see as we go through that there's that this is actually starting to happen, that these tools are available. So first tool that we have to start integrating into our practice is the landscape. Conservation organisations have traditionally used projects. We get money for a year, 3 years, 5 years, spend it and then run out and go looking for more money. And often a donor wants to go in a different direction, so we lose track. The whole conservation world now is shifting to the landscape approach as a way of moving forward. And increasingly, we're seeing that government and corporates are taking on this approach as well. And the reason is that they're long-term, they're large scale, they work at the scale of nature, they're holistic, and that's really important. They allow you to link together different projects in an area. So a forestry project might help generate water for a water program. A water program helps agriculture programs. Agriculture programs ensure nutrition for cities, and cities create demand for renewable energy. Creating those synergies between projects, nature-based projects, is the value of going to the landscape approach. it also allows you to aggregate projects so that you can get to the scale that bankers are interested in, $100 million and above. When we wrote the Little Sustainable Landscape book in 2015, we looked at many different sectors. We found that effectively all sectors, industrial sectors, have one or other type of landscape approach. Climate smart agriculture landscapes, integrated catchment management for water, integrated coastal zone management for oceans, and so on. The content's different, but we found that they basically use the same steps, 5 steps to operate. And they are that the stakeholders come together in a landscape, they define the problem, they understand the causes of that problem, they define the solution, they implement that solution, and then they learn and monitor on their progress. And that process is called integrated landscape management. And the theory is that if you go through that process, you get sustainable landscapes. And if you have enough sustainable landscapes on the planet, then you reach the SDGs. A sustainable landscape is a landscape that meets the SDGs, the global goals. Sounds simple. It's not, and it's messy. We've got a report coming out, and this is a little bit of an advertisement, in a couple of weeks at the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, that gives a bit more guidance on how to do this. And I'm really quite proud of that. So look out for that as it comes. But that's tool number 1, shifting from the project approach to landscapes, embedding your nature-based solutions in a landscape program. How do we finance that? That's the next question. The world of financing is about projects. You finance a bridge or you finance a farm. You don't finance landscapes. But that's changing. And there's plenty of money available for it. The green bonds universe at the moment is worth over $1 trillion, and that's dramatically increased in the last decade. And until recently, it invested largely in buildings, energy, and transport. There was almost nothing for land-based land use programs. But that's really changing now. The bankers are really looking for land-based investments. And what does that look like? Where are some examples of those sorts of landscape investment vehicles? Well, here's 2 that I can point you to. The world of public financing has invested a lot of money in carbon emission reduction programs. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, we've been helping the government and stakeholders there protect an area the size of Greece, 13 million hectares. And this area includes half of the habitat of the bonobo chimp, very important area for conservation. This program reduces emissions by the equivalent of Cape Town. And again, what's important is that it supports 15 different actors doing 15 types of actions. They include setting up conservation areas, reduced impact logging, restoring savanna, planting plantations, climate smart agriculture. And we really are seeing that the synergies developing between these. The savanna restoration that the communities are doing is benefiting from the knowledge of the plantation industry, for instance. So that's public financing. But what we're seeing now is that the commercial world is taking on this sort of thinking. On the right is a sustainability bond that has been built by Michelin, the tire company, and BNP Paribas, the French bank, in Sumatra, Indonesia. So Michelin has an 80,000 hectare rubber plantation that is up against some very important rainforest. This green strip across the island is one of 13 places you find tigers. And it's one of the only places where you find tigers, orangutans, and elephants together. And there's a major risk for Michelin. If that gets destroyed, they could get blamed. So they've built a program that invests in making their plantations more wildlife friendly and sustainable, but also restoring rainforests in ecosystem restoration concessions, getting better management in the protected area, and community rubber, smallholder rubber production. It's really exciting, and $215 million bond, the first tranche is 95 million. So there's two examples of landscape investment vehicles, how you can group together bankable nature solutions into something that really does work at the scale of nature. And here's the theory of how that works. You start with a landscape level goal. What's the problem you want to solve? In Michelin's case, it's getting wildlife friendly rubber and reducing risk, and in fact, also getting cheaper money. You then set a number of SDG targets for the landscape, so forest management, peat restoration, protected areas, and go looking for individual projects, nature-based solutions that can demonstrate progress towards those goals. So in this case, it might be timber production or polluter culture or whatever. They can be commercial or they could be grant-based. But then importantly, you look for scaling pathways. How can you move from one of those projects to 10 or 100 so that you can fill the landscape with beneficial projects? That's the theory of landscape investment vehicles. And we're doing that at the moment. We've just started with the Irish government and the European Investment Bank to look at exactly that sort of process in the peatlands of Ireland, 1.4 million hectares of peatlands, which shifting from emitting carbon to sequestering carbon and creating a payment scheme that replaces government investment into peatland protection. Here's another example in the reefs of Fiji where we're doing this. So in 2017, 15 stakeholder organizations came together to create the Great Sea Reef Resilience Program. There's now 50 organizations that are part of this, and they're delivering two solutions for protecting the reefs of Fiji and removing land-based pollution, land-based runoff. So one of them is a public investment program, a $30 million program to create a Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority type structure for the reefs of Fiji that'll provide governance, monitoring, investment support. And then parallel to that is a really exciting new initiative called Matanataki. This is a green business incubator that has assessed 120 businesses in Fiji. It's now got its first investment, $12 million into waste and recycling businesses, and its target is $50 million. So again, a landscape vision and a set of bankable projects, commercial and grant. And that's at the investment level. That's the investment level at the landscapes. There's now a set of funds starting to develop around the world. The Dutch Fund for Climate and Development is a very good example, where they're investing in both landscape level structures and the nature-based solutions that fit up into those. That's DFCD is a $160 million program and being implemented in 10 countries. And there's quite a few more of those sorts of programs coming along. So that's tool 2, landscape investment, linking the money up to ecosystem goals and creating financial structures at the scale of the landscape. The third tool I think we need, and this is less advanced, is going from the multiplicity, the Tower of Babel of different certification schemes and standards, all of them really good, but none of them talking to each other, to some form of integrated system of impact measurement. We're away from that, but at the moment we're looking at how to do this in the landscape level with gold standard and ISEAL. Can we create a crediting scheme at landscape scale for carbon, biodiversity, water, and certified production? would be really exciting if we can. We'll have a report coming out later in the year on that. So that's the third tool, integrated landscape metrics. We have not quite the wrong tools at the moment, but we've got some new tools coming that I think can really help us operate at the scale of nature. The landscape approach, landscape investment vehicles, and integrated impact credits. And I'll finish by just saying that there's about 1,000 landscapes on this planet, depending on how you cut it, ecoregions, river basins, administrations. We probably only need to get 100 of them for sustainability to solve the SDGs. Less than 100 contain most of the biodiversity on Earth. Less than 100 is where most of the poverty is. Less than 100 have the key water supplies on this planet. Less than 100 have the food production. And from our estimates, it costs somewhere between the price of a jet fighter and an aircraft carrier to do a landscape. Now, the world has produced 100 aircraft carriers. There's no reason why we can't produce 100 sustainable landscapes. And that's the challenge that 1,000 landscapes for 1 billion people, a new movement that we've formed with a whole range of other organizations has taken on. So come and join us, help us develop this new world of landscape finance. And thank you for your attention. And a last plea, when you do your nature-based solutions, link them up to the landscape level. Thank you.